Hi everyone. Today we are going to compare rational numbers using a number line. After this lesson, you should be able to say, I can compare positive and negative rational numbers with and without a number line. The table below shows the elevations above or below sea level of several lakes. Sea level is considered to be an elevation of 0 feet. How could you use a horizontal number line to compare the elevations? You would graph each elevation and compare the locations of the numbers. What happens to the elevations as you move to the right on a number line? The elevations increase. What happens to the elevations as you move left on the number line? The elevations decrease. Which lake is at a lower elevation, Springbrook Lake or Forest Lake? Well, let's take a look at Springbrook Lake. Springbrook Lake is at an elevation of negative 75 2/10 feet. And Forest Lake is at a positive 90 7/10 feet. Springbrook Lake is at a lower elevation. Negative 75 2/10 feet is to the left of 90 7/10 feet on the number line. For example, here is our number line. Negative 75 2/10 is to the left of 90 7/10. Which lake is at a higher elevation? Belden Lake or Springbrook Lake? Let's take a look at Belden Lake. That would be negative 18 5/10 feet. And Springbrook Lake is a negative 75 2/10 feet. Belden Lake is at a higher elevation. Negative 18 5/10 is to the right of negative 75 2/10 on the number line. And here's an example. Here's negative 75 2/10. Here's negative 18 5/10. As you can see, negative 18 5/10 is closer to 0. It is closer to 0 on the number line. Therefore, it is higher than negative 75 2/10. Let's take a look at vocabulary. An inequality is a mathematical sentence that shows the relationship between quantities that are not equal. The mathematical sentences negative 3 is less than 5 and 2 is greater than negative 4 are examples of inequalities. The symbol is read less than. So negative 3 is less than 5 means that negative 3 is less than 5. The symbol is read is greater than. So the symbol is read is greater than. So 2 is greater than negative 4 means 2 is greater than negative 4. You can compare fractions by graphing them on a number line. Number 2. Mrs. Smith and Mr. Jones each have 30 students in their class. If Mrs. Smith corrected 5/8 of last week's math assignments and Mr. Jones corrected 3/4 of last week's science assignments, which teacher corrected the greater portion of the assignments? What marks on a number line would you need to graph 5/8 and 3/4? Well, since 5/8 is a fraction with a denominator of 8, you would need marks that increase by 8. Graph the fractions on the number line. So we have 5/8 and we have 3/4. So it looks like our number line is divided into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 equal sections. So we are going to label our first line 1/8, our second 2/8, our third 3/8. We already have 1/2 labeled for us, however that is 4/8 because 4/8 when it's reduced or simplified is 1/2. Next we have 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, and 1, which would be 8/8 because 8/8 is equal to 1 when you simplify. So we are going to graph 5/8. So on our number line, let's take a look at where 5/8 is. There's 5/8. We are going to plot our point on 5/8. Now we need to graph 3/4. Well, you might ask yourself, well, I don't see 3/4 on here. Well, just like we reduced 4/8 to 1/2, we are going to reduce the other fractions to see if we can find 3/4. Well, 6/8, when you divide both numerator and denominator by 2, it simplifies to 3/4. So 6/8 is equivalent to 3/4. So we are going to put a dot on 6/8 on our number line. Note the locations of the numbers. 3/4 is to the, here's 3/4, and it's to the right of 5/8 on the number line. So 3/4 is greater than 5/8. Write an inequality statement. 3/4 is greater than 5/8. So instead of writing the word like we did up here, we are going to write the symbol. So Mrs. Smith corrected more than Mr. Jones. Use the number line to help you write an inequality comparing -5/8 and -3/4. Well, let's go up to our number line and let's graph -5/8 and -3/4. Well, -5/8 on our number line would be right here. So we plot a dot on -5/8. -3/4, as we talked about over on the right side, would be 6/8. So we look for -6/8, and there's our -3/4. Because again, remember -6/8 is going to reduce to -3/4. Since -3/4 is to the left of -5/8, so again, -3/4 is to the left of 5/8. On the number line, -3/4 is less than -5/8. I would suggest pausing the video at this time and work on numbers 1 and 5 on page 19, and then work on number 7 on page 20. Number 1. The high temperatures of 4 different towns in Norway were measured on the same day. The temperatures of 9 degrees Celsius, -5 degrees Celsius, -1 and 3 degrees Celsius, and 1 and 2 degrees Celsius. I put a little side note over here, and it says the graph is divided into 10 equal sections, so that'll help us to graph our temperatures. So graph the temperatures on the number line. So our first temperature is 9 degrees Celsius. So since our graph is divided into 10 equal sections, and since 9/10 is positive, we are going to go to the right of 0, and we are going to count over 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So that is where we are going to plot 9/10. Negative 5/10 degrees Celsius. Since it's a negative, we are going to go to the left of 0, and we are going to count over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we are going to plot our point at negative 5/10 on the number line. Next we have negative 1 3/10. So since there's a negative sign in front of the integer, we are going to go to the left of 0. So we are going, since negative 1 is the whole number, we are going to go to negative 1 and go 1, 2, 3. So that would be where we are going to plot negative 1 3/10. Now we have 1 2/10 degrees Celsius. Since 1 2/10 is a positive integer, we are going to go over to 1 and count over 1, 2. And that's where we're going to plot 1 2/10. Complete each statement. Negative 5/10 degrees Celsius is blank than negative 1 3/10 degrees Celsius. While negative 5/10 degrees Celsius is greater than negative 1 3/10 degrees Celsius, because negative 5/10 is to the right of negative 1 3/10. 9/10 degrees Celsius is less than 1 2/10 degrees Celsius, because 9/10 is to the left of 1 2/10. Take a look at number 5. We have negative 2/5 and we have negative 5/10. And I put a little side note over here that says convert both rational numbers to the same form and then compare. So here we have a fraction and a decimal, so I decided to convert my fraction to a decimal. Remember, numerator is king or queen, it goes inside the castle. 5 is on the outside. 5 does not go into 2, but 5 can go into 20, so we bring our decimal point up. 5 times 4 gives us 20, we subtract, we get a remainder of 0. So negative 2/5 as a decimal is negative 4/10. And so since we have negative 5/10, and we know that negative 5/10 as a fraction would be negative 1/2, that would be right in the middle, halfway between 0 and negative 1. So we are going to plot our point right here, halfway in between 0 and negative 1, negative 5/10. Since we know that negative 2/5 as a decimal is negative 4/10, we know that we just have to go a little bit to the right of negative 5/10 and plot our negative 2/5 or negative 4/10. Now it says use a number line to write two different inequalities to compare the numbers. So we're going to write two different inequalities. So I started with negative 2/5 first. So negative 2/5 is greater than negative 5/10. The reason why it's greater than is because it is closer to 0 on the number line. It is further to the right. That is why negative 2/5 is greater than negative 5/10. Our next inequality statement, negative 5/10 is less than negative 2/5. That is because negative 5/10 is further to the left of negative 2/5. Number 7, using the number line, select all the inequality statements that are true. So let's take a look at A. It says 2 1/2 is less than 2 3/4. So let's take a look at 2 1/2. Here it is, graphed on the number line, and 2 3/4. Well, since 2 1/2 is to the left of 2 3/4, then 2 1/2 is less than 2 3/4. So 2 1/2 is less than 2 3/4. So that is a correct inequality. B says -1 25/100 is less than -75/100. Let's take a look at -1 25/100 on the number line, and then -75/100. Well, it looks like -1 25/100 is to the left of -75/100. So -1 25/100 is less than -75/100. Answer choice D is also correct. 1 75/100 is greater than 5/10. So we take a look at 1 75/100 on the number line compared to 5/10. 5/10 is to the left of 1 75/100, so that means 5/10 is smaller, and 1 75/100 is greater. So 1 75/100 is greater than 5/10. So answers A, B, and D are correct.